Welcome to MATV studio, and as you know, our programs are on Thursday, every Thursday from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. And tonight we got two members of parliament, Ruth Cadbury and Seema Malhotra. Let's say hello to them first. Seema ji, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Good evening, lovely to be here.
Ruth.
Lovely to be here.
Ruth G.
Ruth G, yes. Thank you.
No, you know, don't you? Anyway, the major issue we have actually, as our viewers would like to know about, is the referendum issue, which is going to be held on 23rd of June, as you all know, I hope. And we always say this, that you use your vote. It is very valuable asset a person can have. And Britain, America, India, and so many other countries in the world, and the countries who do not have democracy, they are desperate for it. They are striving for it. They are struggling for it. And we are lucky that we got the democratic system where we can use our vote the way we want. So today we are going to talk about this referendums. Ruth, what do you think? Should we stay there or should we come out?
Absolutely, I believe we should remain in Europe. I think it's best for the British economy, it's best for jobs and growth and investment. Being in Europe protects our rights. It protects our rights at work and as consumers, and it keeps us safe. But the overarching issue is the economy. Some 3 million British jobs are dependent on Europe and doing business in Europe. It's to us that seems like the crucial issue, and 95% of the Parliamentary Labour Party and most of the Labour Party policy is to support remain in Europe.
So basically you have raised two questions here. You are saying that we are better off economically to stay in Britain, in the EU, and we are also better off from security perspective. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, from the security perspective, don't you think the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that is the best organization to protect our interests rather than EU?
Well, the NATO is very, very important, and of course we should remain in NATO. But I mean, our NATO partners that are in Europe are saying that we should remain in Europe because it provides an economic basis. The other issues in terms of security are things like the European arrest warrant, which has been really useful in ensuring, I think, about 1,500 people have been stopped at our borders, and the European arrest warrant has been really useful in arresting criminals. And if we were outside the EU, we'd have to start all over again in terms of a new treaty, a new arrangement to replace the European arrest warrant, and as one of many things that would have to be renegotiated if we did get out of Europe.
When we talk about NATO, if you look back and look at the situation in Kosovo, and at that time it was the NATO who helped them liberate. And similarly, when we went to Iraq, when we went to Libya, when we went to Afghanistan, now in Syria to some extent, not Syria 100%, but NATO has always been supporting Britain and the United States of America, but not EU.
Well, I mean, NATO has a specific role, and EU has a specific role, but being part of a large organisation that supports our economy and protects our rights, and also has a number of arrangements such as the arrest warrant. It keeps us at the top table. And the EU has been credited with, rather than NATO, but the EU has been credited with keeping Europe together and supportive and solid since the end of World War II. The fact that we haven't had a war in Europe since the end of World War II. The EU and its precursors were a major part of that.
So basically you're saying that after the Second World War, I know when it came into being, they started discussing about this union, and we were not part of it. We became part of it in 1973, and in 1975 there was also 1973 or 75 there was a referendum at that
That's
time.
right, 73.
And majority of British people, they supported the union. And although we had opposition from Charles de Gaulle and all those people, they didn't want us there. So I understand your point now. You are saying that we are better economically protected in EU, and we are better economically and militarily protected in EU, which I debate.
I mean, the strongest reason is the economy.
I took the opposite view because I think if we want the security internationally, then we are better off with NATO. Because in Kosovo's case, EU did not support that cause.
Do you see these as mutually exclusive? Because I don't think they are, you see. This is where there is a debate, but it isn't really a real debate. It's not laying it out as it is in terms of international security, because security comes in different forms. Economic security is a big part of wider security, as well as political security, and as well as then military security. And when you are thinking about how you prevent problems and how you work together, when you're together in a democratic environment, as we are with the European Parliament as well, you have chosen politics and an infrastructure between your nations as your process for making decisions, as your forum in which to have discussions about world affairs and geopolitics. And it makes us stronger. We have to ask these big questions as well about where power lies in the world. And one of the issues that has been most persuasive to me as well, when it comes to thinking about Europe and our place and our prosperity, think of a world which we're in now. You've got 1 billion person plus nations, China, India, economies that are growing because the people are growing as well, large nations, Russia. If you want to be serious as a player in the world, that's why being part of Europe makes us stronger.
A member of a bigger union, yes.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying. Because you are best
nation.
placed actually to talk about economy, because you are the shadow chief secretary to the Treasury. I'm sure you obviously know a lot of things. My viewers, they can also dispute the situation when they say that when you talked about India, when you talk about China, when you talk about the rest of the world, other than 28 countries, they are saying that we can have better business, good business independently with India and China and other countries.
And that's a very important argument. It's a very important argument. The reason why I would say that staying in Europe and in the European Union actually is a help to trading with other nations is because I've talked to people from nations. Why would Prime Minister Modi be saying that whilst it's for Britain to make our mind up, that India believes it's right to stay in the European Union? Why would America be saying the same? Why would almost every other Commonwealth nation be saying the same?
America...
Donald Trump may not.
Obama is saying.
And Marine Le Pen may not.
Yeah.
But you have to then decide whether you want to, when all world leaders are saying, actually we believe that it's helpful for Britain to be in Europe. I'll give you this reason why. People say to me, Indian businesses, many I've been involved in thinking about trade discussions, how we build our relationship stronger with Commonwealth countries, India particularly. They are saying, when we make decisions to invest, we have to think long term. They're investing billions. There are thousands of jobs. They're thinking about their future. They're thinking about where they're going to be selling their goods. They're going to be thinking about how they're going to be making the goods. Now, if you come to somewhere like Britain right now, you have access to a pool of 500 million people, not just to sell your goods to, because it's an easy access consumer market, cheaper to sell because it's as if it's one market, as if you're in one country in many ways, but also where you're going to get talent from. If you decide you want to be developing your cars for the German market or the French market, you can bring in some talent from those countries too and still be based here.
Yeah, but then
So this is, I'll just finish this point. There's a company that I was talking about with somebody. This is why this manufacturer in the UK changed their view from being neutral to saying we should stay in. It was when an Indian company said to them, we're holding off making investment, which will mean hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs in the UK. Because if we come, we're going to limit ourselves to 60 million people. Why would we do that? We could go elsewhere.
But the people are also saying, you know, those people who want to get out of, I got to take the opposite view what you are saying.
Of course.
So the people who are saying that we should get out, they are blaming the system in Brussels. They are saying it is too bureaucratic, it is too corrupt, they are overspending, they are making laws every day virtually, and it is, we do not have the freedom to do our own things.
One point, sorry.
Well, we're not opposed to reform in Europe, and there is, to some extent, rather a lot of bureaucracy. And we also feel in the Labour Party in the UK that the EU spends too much money on agriculture, particularly farmers in other countries. And we think that there should be more EU investment going into innovation and business support and business liaison. But it's much better to be, well, we can only influence those changes if we're in Europe, if we're in the EU. If we're outside the EU, and if we had an arrangement such as Norway or Switzerland has, we'd still end up having to pay just as much per capita to stay in the EU. We wouldn't be able to influence any of the laws and regulations, but we'd have to abide by them.
Right, but when we talk about the reforms, we have seen that David Cameron, he's tried his best. That's what he says. And some people are saying that whatever he has negotiated, any time the EU can say, no, we don't want to follow that.
Well, let me ask you one thing. What percentage of our laws do you think are coming from Brussels?
In my view, quite a few. Actually, we passed you are sitting both in the Parliament, you know, discussing a bill, then it goes to House of Lords, then the Her Majesty the Queen signs, it goes over there, it is turned over.
Most don't.
It was about the House of Commons analysis shows that there's about 13% of our laws. So the majority of our laws are domestic, and not just that, but the majority of the directives and the laws passed in Brussels, well over 90% of them, we have actively negotiated and supported. So there's different ways of seeing this, and if you see the way we have got laws coming together which are protecting our air quality, because air doesn't stop at national boundaries, which are making sure that there are good standards on our products. If, for example, you think about children's toys, how worried you are when you buy toys that are from other countries because you don't know the standard of them, whether they're safe. Those laws are negotiated for our standards, for our food, quality of our food, for our products, for safety, and even the quality of our beaches have been cleaned so much as a result of these rules. That makes our health more safe, and those safety arrangements mean that we have a trust in the products we buy in a way that wasn't the case.
But when we talk about the laws, for example, Human Rights Act, and Article 8, for example, we have seen the people who are not wanted in this country because of their activities. They go over there, they take the case to Strasbourg, apply Article 8, they stay in this country years on years end, and we spend millions of pounds on them. And for example, there was one individual who was extradited to America, and in 8 years we spent millions of pounds on him, and he went there, he was imprisoned within 1 month.
You know, there are very important principles, aren't there, about liberty and about justice and about having a system that's fair. Now, where there may need to be reforms, that's part of what you need to do. You need to engage in the need for reforms. But I don't think anybody would want us to take away the standards of justice that mean, for example, we are one of the most trusted and least corrupt nations, which is attractive for business investment. If you look at many other countries where their ratings are lower for investment, so it's much more expensive because it's higher risk, so they get less, they got fewer jobs, the economy is less. A lot of that is because the justice system isn't strong. Right. So I take your point that people lose confidence when they see individual cases. What they don't hear about are the other cases. And what we have to do then is keep a perspective, but also to say, if there are issues where we need to see some reform and some change, we do that through the mechanisms that we have to make reforms, but with a principle of protecting liberty and justice, which is very important.
But also, I think, are you talking about the European Court of Human Rights, which is not part of the EU? So the referendum is not about the...
No, but it is supported by EU, isn't it?
Well, we're not voting.
We cannot voting on it because Tony Blair in 1997 he incorporated that into the law of this country. That is one problem there. But that is what David Cameron is trying to do. That we have Bill of Rights rather than this act. Am I right or not?
But this isn't, however you have a discussion about rights, and they go on in different ways and different phases in our debates in Parliament, the issue for the European Union referendum really comes down to our relationship with Europe,
with the rest of the
from the point of view of prosperity and security. That's fundamentally what will be affected by the decision made on the 23rd. And what people are also starting to say, if you look at the debate even going on this evening, one of the first European Union debates, the issue about young people's opportunities, how they will be different to the young people in every other nation. They will have 27 nations to choose from if you're a young person growing up, to work or to study. But also the issue of making sure that your rights are protected. Those are matters that are long-term issues.
How confident are you actually that there will be indeed reforms when and if we stay in EU?
I think what our referendum shows Europe is that Britain is a democratic country where people are very, very actively engaged in what Europe is. And, I have faith that the other players in Europe will sit up and take notice. And the debates about the cost and bureaucracy will also be going on in other countries. So I have faith that we will be able to have more influence. But the other thing is we do have quite a lot of influence at the moment, and all sorts of things are going on behind the scenes where we are negotiating around health and safety standards or standard production standards and so on. I'll just give you a very specific example, because I think we often talk in generalities when we talk about the EU and the referendum. But Seema mentioned the case of toys on food. But if you're a manufacturer in Britain, and you want to export outside of the UK, and if you want to expand your business, that's what you would want to do. You'll be wanting, and the EU is the nearest and the best opportunity to do that. You want to open your market up to 500 million people. To know that you only have to have a single standard, the same, you can produce your goods, your toys, your food, or whatever. The standards that you're already producing in this country, you don't have to change anything to export to Europe. You also aren't dealing with tariff barriers. What you're importing is of the right standards and so on. You don't have to start again. We won't have to start again with, say, health and safety standards for your workers,
because
etc.
generally people who are supporting the Remain campaign, they are saying that Germany will not buy from us as much as they do now. But we have German cars. We are the biggest market for Germany. And if we were to come out, they will negotiate the favorable deals with us because they will need us.
Well, the other side of this is if it becomes more expensive to trade because there are more barriers, if we're not involved in we're not part of the single market in the same way, there will be an increase in bureaucracy. There will be new rules that you will have to create.
But you've got to renegotiate all these things.
And that has a cost. That cost will be passed on to consumers. We may well still import from Germany, but the question is, will it be more expensive?
Yeah. Okay.
In my constituency in Chiswick, I know a small and growing firm. It makes specialist uniforms in the hotel sector, and they do they buy their goods and they trade their manufactured goods, both in Europe and outside of Europe, in Asia, the Far East and Middle East. Debbie, who runs the business, she has absolutely no doubt about her costs, and certainty is so much. It's cheaper to produce, cheaper to import, and also there's so little bureaucracy, and bureaucracy has a cost. Uncertainty has a cost. So for her, the business case of remaining in Europe is absolutely, for her, it's so clear. So, real examples, I think, make it a lot clearer to show why we should remain in Europe.
We will have a small break. Thank you very much. And those two, we are talking to Ruth Cadbury and Seema Malhotra, both members of Parliament. We are talking about referendum. We will talk about other issues as well. But
energy price slashed.
Welcome back, and we got Ruth Cadbury, Member of Parliament, and Seema Malhotra in the studio. And in the last half an hour, we have talked about mainly referendum. We will carry on with that, but we will talk about other issues as well. In the referendum debate, the major issue which is being talked about a lot by various people, the campaigners and people who are just sitting on the fence, they don't know whether it should be out or in because there's no clear policy from anybody, and other people are giving the different views. The immigration is a situation where they are saying that 300,000 on average people come from EU countries. That is net figure. And hardly any immigrants come from non-EU countries. And people who are supporting that there should be continuous immigration, they are saying that we should pick and choose, and we should have the point system like Australia, and we get the better people from other countries, non-EU countries. I don't want to name the countries. What do you think in this context, that because we are getting 300,000, 325,000 last year, we had new immigrants from EU countries, and we need the transport for them, we need the schools for them, we want the NHS facilities, we need better welfare reform and so on. These problems are quite visible. What do you think? Do you think this immigration will continue after, if we were to remain or come out of the European Union?
It is a very...
If we remain in the European Union, we know that it will continue. But if we come out, do you think it will make any difference?
I think this is a very complex issue. I don't think it will make the difference that people are talking about, because everyone has a different view. What we do know is that much immigration in any nation is as a result of economic need as well. And it was interesting, there was a report about a week ago showing the amount that's paid in tax, because when people are coming to work, they are earning with everybody else. Just as all the Britons who are living in the European mainland, almost the same number of Britons living in the European mainland as there are others here, are working both ways.
We're talking about the net figure.
And the net figure, but also the, sometimes that is a shorter term kind of staying here as well, whether that's for 6 months or a year. And the economy here, whilst it's been growing, some of that is about the need as well in parts of our growth.
Yeah, I do agree,
So
but at the end of the day, it is the number
complicated,
as well, isn't it?
Well, the Tories have made it about the number. They set a
Yeah.
target rather than based on need as well, haven't they? Because this is where the argument comes in when you look at the argument around the chefs debate as well and the difficulties.
Yeah, I was going to come to that.
I was refuting the challenge here, the idea that if you reduce immigration on one side, that it will open the doors on the other. These are...
I know you clashed with Preeti Patel on that issue.
Well, for this simple reason, if she's employment minister in the Conservative government that has made this decision, nothing to do with the European Union, she could ask her boss, she could ask Theresa May, change the rules.
You are also following somebody.
Change the rules. So we've been very clear. People will know that it was Labour Party policy at the last election, and I wish the Tories had followed this, to say we would add chefs to a skills shortage. And what our policy was if you have people here on a short-term visa, you do that at the same time as you have an apprentice locally, then you're bringing the expertise in and you're training. And there isn't a clear reason why the Tories didn't do that. So it is interesting they're split on this and that they've tried to use this as a way to pretend this is a problem caused by Europe when it's a decision made by the Conservative government.
Because the layman thinks that if not more people are coming from EU, as they are now, we will have people from non-EU countries. Not in that kind of number, but we will have better people, skilled people, while now from Europe, according to the figures, and you know that, they are not all skilled people. And they are pushing the wages down for the British workers.
And it's important as well, I think Ruth will come in on here, but it's very important, and we've talked about this, haven't we, that you have to make sure that the law is enforced around the minimum wage and make sure there's access to jobs and skills for those jobs. But, I have talked to many organisations and our policy has been also different. You have to have an immigration policy that is also connected to the needs of the economy.
Correct.
And it isn't very clear why the Tories haven't put that clearly centre stage in the way they've developed their policy.
But the thing is, if you talk about the living wage, you said minimum wage, and we are talking about living wage as well, which is going to be
the national living wage is the new minimum
which
wage.
will be 9 point something, and that will be a big magnet for people coming from Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, whose wages are 5 times less than us. So the immigration is not going to stop if we remain in the EU.
I mean, there isn't a lot of evidence, and certainly not in London, that there are large numbers of British people who were kept out of work by EU migrants. And a lot of EU migrants...
We still got 2 million people out of work.
Well, the unemployment rates are lowest in London, and we have real difficulties employing people in a number of sectors, such as the care sector, where we've got a growing elderly population who need care, and EU migrants are filling those roles.
I'm not saying they are not.
No, but and because there are not queues of people queuing up to apply for those jobs. And in the chef debate this morning on Radio 4, which I listened to, where the Bangladeshi chefs are restricted from coming and they're being replaced by Eastern European chefs. But what the restaurateurs were saying is that there aren't actually indigenous British people applying for those jobs. Now, we have an issue, as Seema said, is that we need to look at things like the apprenticeship scheme, so that for every migrant employed, we make sure that there's an apprenticeship for a British person to ensure that young people, born and educated here, are able to get into work and into good quality work and training. And can I just say, I mean, it goes without saying, but migrants, almost by definition, are working age, and they are significantly contributing more in taxes than they are receiving in benefits from public sector. There is an issue, particularly in London, where the government is not supporting the public expenditure needed to ensure that we've got sufficient schools, sufficient doctors' places, sufficient hospital capacity. And that is the problem. And that's for government policy to address.
We are talking about the pace of immigration. We are talking about the pace of immigration because it will continue for a number of years. Am I right or not?
Well, the issue is partly as well, if you take a step back and you look at how the world is changing as well. You look at, for example, the changes going on in Africa where the economies are growing. You look at changes going on in India, in China. There are people who are moving around where the opportunities are. So that is happening to some extent in Europe. But what we also see is that people from Eastern Europe who are able to come, just as we from Britain go, don't always stay long term, and they can contribute. And you know what's happening as well. There's always going to be two sides. What are the benefits in terms of us selling goods, in terms of supplies for our construction industry? Very important question.
Will you agree with me that there should be organized immigration? When we say organized, when we have flux of people coming in, I know it is a very emotive word, when a lot of people are coming and our facilities in this country, our hospitals, housing and everything, they are come under strong stress.
It's absolutely
that is what
right.
People are
yes,
saying.
It's absolutely right. And in fact, you know, there are different debates that go on about how you then make sure you are investing in services. Because if you are growing the economy, the workforce is growing, taxes are being paid, and you need to increase public services, then that's the way round you need to do it. There is something very unfortunate with what's going on, and this is where the domestic picture plays a part, where we have seen cuts in services or reduced value in terms of what's available with resources. Some of those have been political decisions, not based on any economics, and that is affecting some of that crunch as well.
Because our resources are depleting, as you said, you know,
choices are being made about how they're being given. So if you look at when we debate around the budget, if I can just point this, when we've debated around the budget, we've said, why are you giving tax cuts to the wealthiest when public services need stronger investment? When you want to see, and this is a big argument with young people, they want skills, they want those that proper investment. So these become political choices, and not just that, but if we think about our roads, our railways, the housing crisis, which is set to continue.
So there is a crisis. That's what I'm saying. We got the housing crisis, and Sadiq is saying that we can build 50,000 houses, affordable houses, and even 50,000 are not enough when 300,000 people are coming into the country every year.
But the housing crisis is a lot to do with young people who can't afford them, and partly because we haven't been building enough homes, so prices have gone up, but also the ease with which very rich foreign investors have been buying homes and then leaving them empty. So there's a whole complex set of issues that is more London specific, less the rest of the country.
Okay.
But and that's partly because
making it sure we've got affordable.
London has become more and more of a magnet. We don't have regional policy in this country anymore. So
London is more in stress.
Yeah,
yes.
but and you know it is an economic success story, but to some extent at the cost of economic growth elsewhere in the country. But it's where the jobs are coming to, it's where the wealth is being created, but there isn't the public sector investment in housing, in schools, in transport and so on to keep up with that level of growth. And if when we've had previous population booms in the UK and in London, the South East, we've built significant amounts of new housing, built new towns and so on. And that's not part of government proposals at the moment, and we think it should be.
That we keep the balance of what you have said about non-EU immigration. I want to quote what Priti Patel said about you. Seema will be fully aware of the discrimination inherent in our immigration system, which is the consequence of freedom of movement rules imposed upon us as members of the EU. And you said that, let's be clear, the decision to restrict has been made by the Home Secretary Theresa May with the backing of David Cameron. Anyone who believes Priti Patel's claims that leaving the EU would solve the problem will end up feeling misled and betrayed. So it has balanced the view actually, so that my viewers are concerned that Priti Patel is saying this and you are saying that. So this solution to, it is not just the chefs, as you know, the skilled doctors, qualified doctors from India and other parts of the world, qualified nurses, qualified teachers. We can have so many people in this country if we were to reduce the unskilled workers coming from EU. That is what people are saying.
Yes, and I think this comes back, doesn't it, to the way the Tories have set, they set a target which was not based on the needs of the economy. This is what it comes back to, isn't it? Because people do say as well, and you'll have heard this, if people are coming to work and they're helping grow the economy and they're starting businesses and they're working in our public services, then that's contributing to our country as well. And so many who come and start businesses are employing local people. So it is about what's the contribution. The question has come whether there's a greater cost to the country or a greater contribution. And when you've looked independently at some of that information from HMRC, increasingly people see that the amount that's paid in taxes and the contribution is much higher than sometimes the newspapers suggest.
You said that quite a few times.
And I've seen the data quite a few times.
Because when we talk about immigration, I'm sorry, just this last point, is that what would you say to Tories when they were saying that only 1 million immigrants have come into this country for the last 5 years, while the national insurance numbers were issued to 2.2 million. You also said in your conversation that these people were temporary, they have gone back, but the figures show most of them haven't.
I'm not sure that when that was raised in Parliament, this was the point. It was actually that saying that they have come for shorter term contracts. So that's why you will have more national insurance numbers. If you come for 6 months or a year and you go back, then your number's still there, isn't it?
Do you like Tory policy that they hide the figures so that they can remain in Europe? Because they said 1 million instead of saying 2.2 million.
No, I'm not. That's not about hiding the numbers. I mean, the numbers are the numbers.
That is what they are blamed for. Yes. They are saying you're hiding the figure.
By the Leave campaigners. Well, the Leave campaigners haven't been trusted on many things, have they? I mean, yesterday they attacked the Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies, when before they've actually said how reputable and reliable the institution is. So I think people have to say, how do we separate the facts from what people are trying to encourage you to believe? That's the very important
thing. The other thing which comes out in this debate about EU membership or not having the EU membership is the fact that mostly the Tories are divided on that issue, and they are more on the television, discussing in or out issues, while the Labour Party is not coming up that strongly. Why is that?
Well, I mean, we're about to have a series of debates, so the Labour Party will be featuring strongly. I mean, I think part of the news story is division within the Conservative Party, and I think there is that unfortunately gets a lot of airtime, and certainly the Conservative Brexiteers get a lot of airtime. But as far as my perspective is that we are making the case as strongly as possible. We don't always get the coverage.
Do you think the Labour Member of Parliament like you, councillors and members of the Labour Party, they are supporting their leader more rather than giving their own opinion?
I don't think so.
No,
this is a 90% plus.
Over 90% of party members, councillors, MPs are strongly behind the Remain in Europe campaign. I think for us, the economic arguments, the rights around workers' rights, consumer rights and so on, to us, common sense, knowing where we're going, the uncertainty of what would happen if we left. What I find is that a lot of the Brexit arguments are based on emotion, and a Britain that
not on facts,
not on facts, and a Britain that once was, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I think if you're, we're in a forward-looking party that looks positively at the UK role in the world, and for us, the UK's role in the world is one of having strong influence as part of a larger Europe.
Do you think people, general public, they are very clear on these issues, whether they should stay in or out, or you think they are still confused?
I think there is a lot of confusion still. I think you've hit on a very important point there, and we hear it when we're talking to people in our communities. We hear it when we're in debates. I think the reason is this, that Europe has felt quite distant because it is far away. Unless you're engaged in science and industry, where pharmaceuticals, how you regulate drugs, in those sorts of fields, education, in science investment, in those sorts of fields, the European Union is very valid and important and part of your day-to-day work.
Yeah, but
otherwise, it's not. It doesn't feel it for most people.
Because most of the people, they're very confused, as you said. They're looking at you, looking at Ruth, and they might be thinking, oh, perhaps they are right. And then on the other hand, they will say, they are talking rubbish. And somebody else comes. People are very... Now, I got 2 of these leaflets. This one, I think Tories spent £9.7 million on these kind of things on this film. And then there were out campaigners, they were doing the same thing. And you look at these points, you can carry on discussing this for 2 more hours.
It becomes very clear I think, well, it certainly became very clear to me, when you decide what's the most important thing. If the most important thing, which is what most people care about, is their jobs, their family's income, opportunities for their children, their grandchildren,
the cost of living,
price of goods in our shops, house prices, you don't want assets to fall.
See, all those...
These are the day-to-day things that have our economies have interdependency now.
Yeah, we got only 5 minutes now. But what you have said about people are worried about their jobs, that is why I was discussing this immigration situation. If you talk to people on the street, they will say, well, these people are coming, they are taking over job. I know this argument, when I came in 1962, they were still saying that thing. That is a general worry people have.
But I mean,
when there's no control on immigration.
But when people say that to me, I say, well, how has it affected you? Have you had your job taken by somebody from the EU? And nobody has ever said, oh, yes, it's happened to me. There isn't any evidence that this is actually the case. Whereas there are at least 3 million jobs in Britain that are in roles with employers.
Yeah, I give you just one example. I will give just one example of Government Gome. You're very close to that case. And you know what happened there? They went on strike. The workers went on strike for their more rights, more money or whatever. And they were replaced by Polish workers.
Look, there's a way here that I think is important to think about the economy as a whole. So when all the evidence by the Bank of England, the Treasury and others are saying the uncertainty that could come from withdrawal could drop our GDP by 3, 4, 5, 6%.
Yep.
That is huge in terms of jobs, not just for 1 year or 2 years. That's 5, 10 years or even more. That's why, well, there's criticism, there has been criticism about whether the Labour Party has been visible, but what we've said, and Jeremy is out making speeches 3 or 4 times a week, and John McDonnell, he's doing a tour of this country, of the country over the next week. I did 5 events last week. So this is about saying, we've said it's about more jobs, and better rights at work. Fundamental. Have debates about everything else, but let's jeopardize our jobs.
Let me say this in the end. I want to bring another topic. Donald Trump, he is going to be the Republican candidate, that is for sure. If Jeremy Corbyn becomes the Prime Minister, Donald Trump is the President of America, do you think they will see eye to eye to each other? How will they behave?
I have a feeling that Donald Trump is not going to win the presidency.
Well, that is all assumption. You
Well,
never know.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is
yeah.
very strong.
Very, very strong.
And he's going to come through.
The things do happen which we don't expect, you know. You said that in this conversation also.
Well, I was talking to somebody today who has close friends who live in Florida who always vote Republican and are not going to be voting for Donald Trump. They will either not vote or vote for Hillary Clinton because thank goodness there is a large body of opinion in America that is really worried about the implications of Donald Trump being president. So, you know, we're all hoping that...
we are all hoping, but let's assume.
I have great confidence.
You've got
in
great
America.
confidence that he will not win.
I have great confidence.
Okay, let's assume he wins.
I think there'll be a very big debate in America. And the reason is that America, just as many other nations we're all dealing with the threats and the challenges of modern world. We haven't touched on the digital future, the digital single market, that's the big part of Europe as well, and technology. That's where a lot of these challenges come from.
I've run out of time, but let me say thank you from my bottom of my heart for you to come here and discuss this thing. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you very much for
You're very
inviting
busy
you.
people, I know that, but thank you very much indeed.
Enjoyed being on the show.
And we had really good discussion, I think, whether we stay in Britain, European Union or come out. I ask everybody to go out and vote.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
And make sure they're registered to vote, and
They've got till June the 7th to
June
register.
the 7th to register, and
They've
to
got
make
to really
sure.
hurry up,
And if
isn't
they
it?
need a postal vote, make sure they get a postal vote. And if they've been away at university,
Thank
make
you.
sure the postal vote comes here.
So that was our program. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you next week, 9:30 p.m. on Thursday. Thank you very much.